Welcome back, listeners. I'm guessing you're here for another epic tale of heroism and villainism. Well, sorry, I'm not here to share a story about any of that. Instead, I'm going to share a much more interesting story, one that defies reality and will probably leave your head spinning. Have I caught your interest? Our story begins in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where a small 10-year-old boy named G lives. G is short for Gregory. G was a special young boy with some incredible abilities. The only problem is, he can't control them. At least, not at this point in time, but more on that later. G is what you would call a dreamer. I'm not talking about someone who daydreams or someone who has big ambitions in life. No. I mean, he has the ability to make his dreams come to life. This may sound like a gift, but it was seen as more of a curse for the residents of Pittsburgh. One night, G was caught in a 14-hour dream. While asleep, a giant barrier engulfed all of Pittsburgh's borders. The citizens in the barrier morphed and transformed to this dreamer's will. Nurses became cute little fairies that flew around checking everyone's vitals. They sought patients that had cardiac illnesses and healed them. Seems like such a great thing, right? Wrong! Some of the fairies weren't all good. Some of them attempted to cause an increase in their patients' palpitations, which led some citizens to suffer from heart attacks. I guess you can't always trust a fairy. If you think the fairies are weird, then guess you might not be ready to hear about the stray cats. I'm not pulling your finger. G turned all the stray cats in the city into weird abominations. One cat named Akio was causing so much trouble for his owner, Emily, who abandoned him 2 weeks earlier. Akio was a black cat with green eyes, who ended up developing blue spots all over his body that resembled eyeballs. He toyed around with Emily by producing large gusts of wind, blowing Emily up and down in the air. Akio wouldn't normally cause any harm to anyone, especially Emily, but he was being controlled by one of the worst cats in Pittsburgh, Captain Kitty. Captain Kitty looked like a super blue radioactive feline. Electricity ran down the paws of this tenacious tabby and struck down Emily. Akio awoke from the mind control that Captain Kitty put him under. Upon awakening, the blue spots on Akio's fur began to disappear. Akio blew a large gust of wind behind him to propel himself forward at Captain Kitty. But this was all pointless. Captain Kitty uses mind swap abilities to take over Akio's mind once more. Captain Kitty switched Akio's consciousness with that of an ant. Captain Kitty, being curious and inquisitive feline, decided that he would run a few tests to see if Akio really did have 9 lives. After the first test, Captain Kitty determined that Akio may have already used up his other 8 lives before their encounter. Even stranger than cats and fairies were the humans who lost their flesh and became living, walking skeletons. One ginormous skeleton proclaimed himself to be the skeletal sovereign of Pittsburgh. He turned his right hand into a bone sword and his left hand into a bone shield. I suspect he was a huge fan of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, but not much information is really well known about this crazy bony guy. Interestingly enough, he was fighting a skeleton being? Let's go with that. He was fighting with a skeleton being that wore a crown and created portals, where he was shooting projectiles at the enormous bag of bones. Some of the skeletal beings were doing battle, and then there were some, like Skelly the Skeleton, that were just happy to be around and playing with their newfound bone abilities in the park with the other neighborhood skeleton kids. Subconsciously, G must have known about the crazy skeletons and created a way to remove them all. In the sky was a giant bipedal dragon. The dragon was orange with yellow horns and wore a green supersuit with a bone emblem. It seemed this dragon was some sort of bone eater. He flew down and began devouring the bone creatures. Moments later, a tall walking figure appeared before the dragon's eyes. This super long-legged figure with flowing orange hair went by the name of Emil. The dragon quickly turned his sights to Emil with ever-growing hunger to devour his bones. Emil had a chest tattoo of a skeleton that stretched up his neck and down the rest of his body. Emil created a bone barrier that protected him from the dragon's appetite. The dragon bone eater was moving in for another attack when all of a sudden a giant rock squashed him. Emil turned around and came face to face with someone who looked like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. This rocky, bulky figure with sunglasses and a raised eyebrow looked at Emil and asked him what his name was. As Emil began to answer, he was quickly interrupted by the rocky figure, who said, "It doesn't matter what your name is." This enraged Emil, who then ran towards the rock beast. The stoned man struck down Emil in a single blow with his mighty elbow. He then took a large rock-like boulder and made sure Emil was on the bottom. I've read many stories, but not many as trippy or as strange as this one. G is one of the most powerful mutants around. Many believe him to be dangerous, too dangerous. The residents of Pittsburgh have asked that inhibitor collars or inhibitor chips be used to cancel out G's abilities while he resides in Pennsylvania. Others have signed petitions to send him into some sort of supermax facility. What many of these mutant-phobic individuals didn't understand was that G was a child with a wild imagination, and he had no idea how to use his powers. It wasn't until later that a teacher at an institute in New York took G in to train him to use his abilities so that he wouldn't become a danger anymore, or to cause trouble with his abilities unwillingly and unknowingly. G's new path is important in the events that have yet to unfold in New York. An event that will change the course of history as we know it. The only question is, will you be here to listen? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Definitely one of the more trippier episodes that I've had the pleasure of writing. I definitely want to take a moment to thank the kids that submitted in the great character ideas. So Cardi Fairy was submitted in by my student Oniga. Really like the way that Cardi Fairy came about. I really like your kawaii style, and so it made it really easy for me to want to choose her to draw. We have Akio the cat that my student Faiza created. I really like the colors that you use. I like the fact that he had these blue spots that kind of looked like eyes growing on him, so I thought that was pretty brilliant. Really funny art piece, Captain Kitty, submitted in by my student Elena. I thought the electricity thing was cool, but I don't know. I think just the fact that you named your character Captain Kitty, it just had to find a spot somewhere in the series. Really love the color on your blue cat, but really like the whole mind control type of aspect or mind swap type of aspect. I thought that was pretty cool. Then we've got Skeletal Sovereign, really scary dude, submitted in by my student Caleb. I didn't put the glowing red eyes in my piece. I like that you have the red there, but I thought it, with all the other skeletons having more or less just black eye sockets, I thought it would have felt a little out of place, so I just did not put it in, Caleb. Hope you're okay with that. Then we have Skeletal Syndrome from my student Kaylin. Kaylin was the student that also submitted in a redraw request for Jester that showed up in the last S-Verse Chronicles episode as well. So here's a second cool art piece from her. Had a lot of fun with the portals. I thought that was a cool piece. Then we have Skelly the Skeleton. My student Kinsey submitted this one in. This one seemed more like a free spirit, happy skeleton, kind of messing around and learning how to use her abilities. So I definitely wanted to add her into the mix, so I thought she was fun. The Dragon Bone Eater was submitted in by my student Logan. I liked your color palette with like the orangish, reddish green, and so I wanted to make sure that I had him in there. And then I figured since he's a Dragon Bone Eater, I might as well make him extra large. I did give him the wings on my piece, but I don't think he's able or really super capable of long flight. I might end up messing around with that a little bit in the future. Then we have Emil that was submitted in by my student Veronica. I liked Emil's look. I think aesthetically he's really cool. Like the super thin, super long legs and the fact that you can have like a skeletal bone shield around you. I thought that was pretty awesome. So I definitely needed a giant character to face a giant dragon, so I thought that was a good piece. And then, of course, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, super fan, right? My student Caroline, she really wanted Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to be in here because she thinks he's like the coolest superhero. And so I made him into a rock golem of sorts to do battle with Emil. I thought contrast-wise, we needed some thicker characters in there, and I think it worked out fine. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I hope you really enjoyed this S-Verse Chronicles episode. I can't wait for the next one to come out. Hope you guys really enjoyed the episode. I'll see you all next Tuesday for our regularly scheduled videos. You guys all have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.